Good morning. How are you guys? Good. We, as you know, the older students were able to watch the Fat Boy Chronicles, which has an incredible message about bullying in it. And we are so incredibly blessed to have Michael Buchanan, who is the author of that incredible story. And that stems from a young man who was actually bullied. I know there's people here that have been bullied or have maybe been the one who has bullied. So he's going to speak to us a little bit today. He lives in Alpharetta. So he's not very far from us, but he has gotten up at the crack of dawn to come up and hang out with us, and so we're really excited about that. He is a screenwriter, he is a writer, he's a co-author, and he also is a teacher. He was a teacher, and he's retired now, and has been given the incredible opportunity to travel around and to speak to children and do workshops and come like he's a guest speaker today to speak to us about the importance of bullying. So we want to give him our total just give him your total attention. He won't be here for very, very long. So just give him all of your attention while he's here and really listen to what he has to say. Another thing is, if you guys have seen, who knows what a red box is? You guys know what red boxes are, right? You guys know what Netflix is? Okay, so this movie, if you have not seen it, if you were unable to see it, the younger children, actually is on Redbox. Is in the Redbox. It's number 6 at Redbox, and it's on Netflix. You can rent it right off of Netflix. So it's not like it's a little itty-bitty movie that nobody's heard about. It is a very famous movie. So anyways, he is an incredible speaker. He is an incredible author. And if you saw the movie yesterday, you saw that he's also an actor. He was the science teacher in the movie. So you guys, please give a warm welcome and listen to Michael Buchanan as he talks to us about the Fat Boy Chronicles.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the invitation to come up here today. And I definitely saw the sunrise this morning, about 20 minutes into my ride up here. So, but it was beautiful. It was a wonderful morning, and so glad to be here to talk about issues that are important for you guys and for all of us, but especially for students, because the world of youth today is different than when I was growing up. There's issues that affect you, whether it's the childhood obesity issue or if it's bullying, and they're both very connected. And so I thought we'd talk a little bit about some of the things. You know, we're going to talk to you guys, and then later on we're going to talk to the older students a little more in depth about some things. But I wanted to start out saying, yes, I'm a retired teacher. I taught. I write books and all that kind of stuff and screenplays, and so you immediately think that I taught math. That's right. I taught trig and all those kind of things, and so that's how that works, you know. So one of the lessons there is always try things. You never know what might work out for you. The lady that I write with, she lives in Cincinnati, and she was the English teacher, and we met on a co-chaperoned trip, and it was a bunch of teachers and students and all this kind of stuff. We got to talk about writing, and within a year I was writing a book, and I never would have thought that I would be doing that. And but that was 13 years ago, and 5 books ago, and about that many screenplays, and so it's exciting. And so whatever it is you think you might want to do, or if an opportunity ever comes up, then try. If it doesn't work out, so be it. But if you don't try, you'll never know. And so that's one of the things. I did want to talk about in teaching, and I was a basketball coach also for 20 years. I coached high school basketball. One of the things I wanted to talk to you guys about, especially, is whether I was coaching, whether I was teaching, or whatever. Potential is wonderful, but in the long run, you are judged by what you do. Right? You can say that I'm the best basketball player and I need to be on your team. You can say that I'm a wonderful math student, I need to make an A in your class, or whatever it might be. But I would always judge you by what you do. And so if somebody was trying out for the basketball team and they didn't make their foul shots and they missed their layups and they were late for practice and they were not nice to people, and I could tell they weren't going to be a good teammate, what they did spoke volumes about them more than what they told me they would do. And so I think that's very important, whether you're in kindergarten, first grade, or whether you're in older grades. The world judges you by what you do. Talking is easy. And so backing it up is the hard part. But that's why we work hard, so that when we have goals of where we want to be, we know the things we have to do, and that's what we strive for, is to be that person that we said we're going to be. A couple of things I wanted to do is read a couple of things, because I want to talk about writing for a second. And one of them is kind of, lighthearted. In the book, it's a journal of a kid in 9th grade, and it's for his English class. And in the entries he lets the teacher read, it's just kind of funny, high school life, because high school life can be quite entertaining in the years that I taught, especially when I would teach 9th graders every now and then. Usually I taught upper class, but I would teach 9th graders just for the entertainment value, and because they would do about 15 things a day that would be goofy. And so you could write 5 books in just 1 year of teaching 9th graders, and because they're just an endless supply of material. And so, but it was great. I loved them, and they were wonderful. And but so anyway, so there's entries in the book that are where Jimmy lets the teacher read them, because it's his journal for class. Then the teacher has told him, if there are things you don't want me to read, fold them and write, please don't read this. And so there's many of those in the book too, and those are the days that are not so nice and funny, and those are the personal days of Jimmy's journey, as opposed to describing high school life and what's happening around him and his friends and things like that. So this is a couple of them that I worked on. I worked with Diane on the book, but when you're writing, somebody has to put the words down on the page first, and then you can go back and edit, and you talk about where the direction that you want the book to go and things like that, and the type of ending that you want it to have. One of the things that Diane and I do first, in whichever story we're working on, whether it's screenplay or book, is to talk about the ending. And so just kind of the way we both see the world is we like happy endings. And so we always try to come up with an ending that is very satisfying and that we get really excited about. Then when you go back and start writing up to the ending, then it just feels easier, because you can't wait to get there and to see this resolution. That's a good one. So here's something that y'all might relate to. We had school pictures taken today. I really hate picture day. Now, Jimmy, the main character, is a kid, for those of y'all that don't know, is a kid who's overweight, and he gets picked on. And it's happened all the way through elementary and middle school, and now he's a 9th grader, and he's kind of hoping, wow, I'm in high school. Maybe things will be different. But maybe not at first. We had school pictures taken today. I really hate picture day. It's okay to get out of class, but that's about all it's worth. Ever since middle school, when I started getting bigger, I have dreaded the long walk to picture day. I feel like Frodo walking to Mordor. It used to be fun waiting in line, watching everyone comb their hair or asking, how do I look? I guess about 3 years ago, I quit asking. I remember the first time someone answered with a smile and said, oh, you look great, Jimmy. But I could tell they didn't mean it. They wanted to say, you look pretty fat, Jimmy. Today was no different. I got real nervous waiting, and once again, it felt like forever before it was my turn. So anyway, so that's one of them. All right, here's another one. It says, he's talking about PE class, and he's their teacher's call and roll. And he says, I raised my hand when Coach Bronner called my name, and he looked at me over his glasses. You don't have to raise your hand, son. Just say here. I said, yes, sir. But he kept looking at me. In the stands behind me, Rob, that's the quarterback, said, just say tomato, present and accounted for. Coach cut his eyes up there but said nothing to him. When we got dressed after class, I waited till everyone was gone before I changed. They were all out in the hall ready to leave while I sat in the locker room. It really hurts to have someone say those things. Don't they know that I try to be a good person and that I would cheer for them at the football games? Like I wouldn't want to be on the team, running all around and not sweating like crazy. They have it so easy, and they pick on me. I mean, why are these guys in a class with a bunch of freshmen anyway? So they can pick on us? Alan said some of them don't need any more credit, so they take PE classes all day. But what's the point in that? So they can make kids like me miserable? I can hear Rob's voice in my head. I'll probably hear it in my sleep. When Mom came into my room last night, I had to pretend I was asleep so she wouldn't know I had been crying. All right? And so when you write things like that, and you write them, and it's like Jimmy thinking and writing or talking in conversation, whatever, a lot of it you create, but when it comes to the emotions that go in, whether it's something that's funny that you see come off the screen or off the page, or whether it's something that's not so funny, like that part right there, where this kid's talking about having to not let his mom know that he'd been crying. You feel that as a writer. And so anything that you ever see that where emotion comes to you, it had to go into the page and onto the writing. And so that means that being a writer can have happy days and it can have not so happy days. Where when you're writing things like that, I feel that. And it's not, I don't just feel it as Jimmy, I feel it as myself, because I remembered my growing up and how I was treated at times and how I was left out and how I was picked on by being the kid with the little kid with the glasses. And so I know how Jimmy felt. And then when I'm writing some of the other things, I remember being the kid who stood there and watched in high school when this kid named Paul was picked on by another kid named Donald. And I regret to this day having done nothing. And so when I write this stuff, it's difficult at times. And so anytime you're writing, whether it's something you're turning into your teacher, it's writing for yourself, it's you want to be a writer one day, you've got to put emotion into it if you ever want emotion to come out of it. Okay? And so that hopefully that will mean something one day when you get to that point. So, what is bullying? You guys toward the front. One of the things that Jimmy has to deal with is being bullied a lot because he's the overweight kid. What is bullying? What do you think? It's being mean to other people. Does it necessarily mean that it's being mean in a physical way? Is bullying only throwing a rock at somebody or pushing them down the stairs or something like that? No. That's right. It's not. So what else might it be? It could be like if you hurt somebody. Yeah. It can be that. What about this? What if you were in the cafeteria, or when you grow up and you're out in the world and you're in a place where everybody's kind of in this together, where it's at workplace or you're a teacher or whatever it might be, and you see somebody sitting by themselves and they're the new kid or they're the new employee, whatever, and you go on and sit with your friends and you let that person sit by themselves. Is that bullying? Yeah. Sure it is, right? You made a choice to not go sit with that person. And they see what you do. People see what you do, all right? What about, what other kind? What about spreading rumors about somebody, whether it's in school or it's on the internet? Is that bullying? Oh, sure it is, right? There's some really mean things that are said on the internet these days. And one of the things is, you know, when I was growing up, there wasn't an internet. And so a lot of adults have had to try to figure out that world of the internet. And so a lot of times you guys have to be the ones to not make that bad choice in the first place, because as you know, once something is put on there, whether it's on Facebook or wherever it might be, or if it's just an email back and forth, it's there forever. You can't undo that. And you can't undo that pain that somebody feels when they read that and they see how people are talking about it. That you can never take that away. What about calling them names? Is that something? Yes, for sure it is, okay? And so people are who they are. You know, they can change their behavior, but who they are and what they look like and things like that and where they're from, then that's them forever. And so to make fun of that is not a nice thing. And so always remember. Now, you know, you watch TV and things like that, and CNN that was brought up. And who gets all the media coverage about bullying and things like that? Anybody? Yes, you in the front. It's okay. It's mostly the big kids, isn't it? When you watch something on TV, it's like, you know, 14-year-old Billy did this, and 17-year-old Becky did that, and they're on trial, and they're this and that, and a lot of the news covers the big kids. But Diane and I talk to teacher groups all over the nation, and every time we talk to them, they always say, I'm a kindergarten teacher, I'm a first grade teacher, and I know who the bullies are. And so it doesn't just start when somebody all of a sudden enters the 6th grade. Nobody says, you know what, I understand the studies say that 6th grade is the worst year for bullying. You know what, Mom, I'm going into 6th grade next year. I think I'll start being a bully. No, it doesn't work like that. It starts when they're your age. And it all happens because some people don't think about how you should treat folks and how it affects them. And so those of y'all that are less than 6th grade, always remember that what you say and how you treat somebody, or the things that you don't say, like, hey, you want to come sit with us? Or to tell somebody who might be being mean to somebody, hey, that's not nice, don't do that. All right? Those kind of things last a long, long time, because we have talked to many people that will tell us how they were treated when they were younger. And some of the most memorable ones and the most painful ones were people in their 60s and 70s. This fella came up to us at a book signing and he said, I read your book. And he said, it took me back to when I was 11 years old. And he started to cry, right? And he never told us what it was. But was nothing for me to do other than just give him a hug, because I couldn't make that go away. I couldn't undo what people had said to him, right? But it had been in his mind for 60 years how he was treated, right? And y'all know what reunions are and things like that, right? I bet your parents go to their high school reunions and stuff. We've had a lot of people that say, I've never been to any of my high school reunions because I don't want to have to look at the people who picked on me, right? And they'll be in their 50s and 60s. And so it stays in there forever. I can still remember vividly being picked on in 7th grade. I don't remember much else about 7th grade, but I remember that, right? And I'll never forget it. So always remember, people are going to remember how nice you were to them, and they're going to remember how not nice you were to them. And so always be there for your friends. And one of the things that you can always do, always remember that it's okay to tell an adult. It's okay to talk to your mom and your dad and your teacher and your coach and your counselor and anybody that you feel comfortable talking with, okay? Or an older brother and sister if that works for you, okay? Always remember that it's okay to talk to somebody about something that you think is not right, okay? And you might end up saving somebody's life. That could be wonderful, okay? You don't have to be a fireman and a policeman to be a hero. You can be a first grader by doing the right thing, okay? So how many of y'all really love your grandma and your grandpa? Oh my gosh. Or mom and dad and all these people, right? And your teachers and all that. What if somebody was mean to your grandma or grandpa? That'd make you feel really bad, wouldn't it? What if they started telling you about something that happened to them a long time ago, and you're like, wow, I wish I could make that not happen, right? Well, you know what? Me and your grandma and your grandpa and all your teachers, we were all just like you. We were all in first grade at one time. We were all in kindergarten, okay? And we all grew up. And there's some things that we don't want to have to remember. So, you know, when I coached, if somebody wanted to be a better foul shot person, guess what we had to do? What do you think? We had to practice. If somebody wanted to be better at algebra, guess what they had to do? Practice. Whatever it might be, if you want to be better at it, you practice. Sometimes people practice being not nice, and they get good at it. So what we're going to do is practice being nice. So all of y'all, all of you guys down here, and everybody can do it, we're going to turn to the person on either side of us, and we're going to say something nice. Ready, go. Okay, so since the movie is, we can talk about the movie, and then that'll kind of lead into to stuff that we need to chat about. So we'll take 10 minutes if you want and do Q&A. So who's got a question about the movie? And that might lead into some of the stuff I'm going to talk about. Yes, sir. And your question is?
What was your inspiration for this movie?
The inspiration for the movie was this kid that we met about 6 years ago when we were doing a book signing up in Cincinnati. And he walked up to us and he said, y'all are writers? And we're like, yeah. And he said, and y'all were teachers? And we're like, mm-hmm. And he said, well, you need to tell my story. And so I'm going to talk a little bit more about that kid, but that's where it came from. And so he had been the overweight, picked on kid all the way through elementary and middle school. But he figured out life as an 8th grader. And so we kind of took the essence of that kid and created this world around him, because Diane and I, having been teachers, we're like, well, we could tell this kid's story, or we could tell a lot of kids' story. And so that's where Sable came from, and Paul and all the other characters. They were all based upon somebody that we've taught along the way. Because if you teach long enough, you know all those kids. You know the good ones, you know the ones that, struggle, but the thing you realize is that every person that walks through the doors of a school, kid and adult alike, all have something that sits on their shoulders that's heavy. And so weight comes in all kind of forms. And so everybody has something that they could be bullied about. And we all have things that we struggle with. And it's just for the overweight kid, their issue is more noticeable. And so it makes him the easiest target in school. And so, but that's where essentially the book and the story and all of it came from. And then the movie was adapted from the book. When we were doing the cover shoot, the kid on the cover ended up being the kid in the movie, as you noticed, but it wasn't planned like that. We were doing the book cover, and the guy who ended up being our main investor for the movie had read the manuscript for the book. And he's like, wow, this is pretty good. And he said, this will make a really good movie to go along with the book and stuff like that. And we're like, okay. And he said, how long would it take you to do the screenplay? And I said, yeah, I don't know, about 6 months. And he said, but there's 2 of you. I'll give you 3 months. So we wrote the script not in a hurry, but, it really is about 3 or 4 months, which is kind of quick. And and then it ended up being filmed in the summer of '09. So that's kind of how all this worked out. We were in the town of Noonan, if you know where that is, just south of Atlanta. And we were there right after Zombieland finished filming. And so I remember the mayor asking us, he said, you're not going to leave any arms and legs laying around, are you? And we're like, no. We have a nice movie. Well, sort of. There's parts that are difficult. So anyway, okay, that was a long answer, but that answered a lot of questions, I think, because that stuff will come up. Next question. Yes, sir. Step right up, please, because we have to get you recorded.
What made you want to write about the kid's story?
Why did we want to write about that? Why did we want to write about that kid's story? That's good. I mean, it's kind of the same thing, but you get so many ideas for stories. Number one, people are always coming to you and go, man, you wouldn't believe my uncle. He's the craziest person ever. You need to write a book about him. And so we're always getting things like that. But this one really hit a nerve for some reason, partly because of the kid and because he had figured it out even though he had been like 190 pounds in 7th and 8th grade. When we met him, he was a sophomore in high school, and he had lost about 50, 60 pounds. And he still kept it off, and he was a nice kid, and he tried to do right, and he had pretty good family support, and his church youth group was a great support to him. And so we were like, okay, really lends itself to telling a bigger story than just this kid. And as teachers, when you see things work out, it's wonderful, because there's a lot of times as teachers where things don't work out, regardless of how hard people try. And so that part really touched our heart, and so that was the main reason. Because, you get a lot of stories come across the table, and every now and then one will go make you just stop and pay attention, and that was one of them. And your question is?
Since you had such a short time to make that screenplay in the set, do you think that you would have could change anything in the set? Because the Dove Foundation also rated it as kids who are 12 and up.
Right.
Do you think you could change it if you had any changes that you could possibly make to the set to make it more available to kids who are younger than that?
That's a good question. I mean, one of the things we considered was, who's the audience? But at the same time, we knew that if we sugar-coated the issues, it probably wouldn't do anybody a big favor. Because what happens too many times in the world is everything is kind of glossed over, and they never really make the difference and the change in behavior they want to. And so we felt it important to keep the darker issues in there and the scenes that were difficult, because in many cases, only when you kind of smack somebody in the face with something do they pay attention. If we didn't have the bullying scenes, as vicious as they are a couple of times, people may not have felt that emotion come out of it. And if you're not going to feel that emotion, if it doesn't work you up to see Jimmy banging on that door outside the locker room and with him crying because they've locked him out, then we haven't done a good job. If that touches you in some way, then that's good, because that's the only way people are going to buy into being part of the solution, is they can feel the pain of the problem. And one of the things that's interesting about that scene, you remember the locker room scene? And there's a little quick shot where Jimmy pushes on the door, and you can see Spencer, you can see the kids holding the door. And when we filmed that day, all of a sudden we knew that okay, here's the scene that's coming up, and it was like the whole atmosphere of the gym changed. The whole atmosphere of on set changed, because we were like, oh, this is going to be awful. And the director went off with Chris, the kid who plays Jimmy, and they talked for about 30, 40 minutes about Chris's life, which hasn't been the best. And so when he's crying, those are as much Chris's tears as they are Jimmy's tears. And so, and he only had enough energy to do that 3 times. But when you see the door being pushed open, and if you really look at the kid's eyes for that brief second, you can see that he's got tears in his eyes. Because when the director yelled, "Cut, moving on," they came out from holding the door and they were crying. Because all of a sudden, even though it was make-believe, it didn't feel like it. Because all of a sudden they understood the consequences of what you think is cute and funny somewhere else, and you think, oh, they'll get over it, and they'll be okay. They're not. And they understood the consequences of how you treat folks. And it bothered them, and it bothered the people that were running the cameras. Everybody was affected by the filming of that scene. And so that's the thing I was talking about earlier. You've got to, if you don't put emotion into it, it will never come out. And it came out just watching that scene being filmed. So yes, we thought about toning it down, but then we were like, no, we don't need to, because we want people to get it.
Did the character Chris that played Jimmy, was he ever bullied in his life?
Okay, the kid that played Jimmy, his name is Christopher Rivera. Just so you know, he's in New York at, the New York School for Dramatic Arts or something like that. And, but yes, he was bullied in middle school. And the year that he filmed the movie, he was a 9th grader. And that year, as a defense mechanism, he decided that he would be the bully, right? because he had been tired of being the overweight kid that got picked on. And when he started ninth grade, then he said, you know what, I think I'm going to be the bully. And so he started picking on people that year. He's like, well, I'd rather do that first before it happens to me. And when we started filming the movie, when he read the book like a bunch of times so we could kind of get into the character, he was talking to me and the director, and he's like, man, he said, I have to tell y'all something. He said, I treated people poorly this past year. And he said, but being a part of this project, he said, I now know how wrong I was. And then he turned everything around. And when he can, he does talks with us and all that. And he speaks about being the bully. But he also speaks about how he changed and how everybody can change. Even if you make some bad choices, you can change. And so yeah, he had experience on both sides of the issue. And if you notice in the movie, Jimmy is not always the victim. Jimmy is also the bully. How is Jimmy the bully in the movie? When he put his sister's picture on the internet and all that stuff, trying to catch the killer, well, they ended up making her miserable, right? And so that's just another form of bullying, the internet kind, the cyberbullying that we talked about.
What about the teachers being the issue, or like having a cold shoulder for the issue?
Oh, that's good. One of the things that we did, that's great, in the book initially, in which then follows into the movie, we didn't want the adults to necessarily be the heroes, because that's not always the case anyway. I've taught in enough schools to know that sometimes the teachers are the bullies and sometimes the coaches are the bullies, right? That's not always the case, but it happens enough that it's noticeable. And what we really wanted to point out is that Jimmy and Paul and Sable and Rob, they made a conscious choice in their life without somebody saying, oh, here's what you should do. They decided it on their own. Jimmy decided that he wanted to lose the weight and make his life better. And Sable went away to get help from the issues that she was struggling with. And in the quarterback too, right, Rob. And so we wanted it to be where the kids own the issue and they're the ones that make the difference. Because it doesn't matter what it is that you're ever trying to accomplish until you decide that you want to make the difference. It doesn't matter what everybody around you is saying for the most part. I've sat in enough teacher conference meetings with parents and everybody around the table is like, we've got this idea and this and this and this and this. And they're all talking about what they can do to make Johnny's life better. But until Johnny or Becky decides that, yeah, I want to make that difference, then all of us talking about it might not make them change, okay? So whatever it is, you have to own the thing that you want to become, and then it happens, okay? It's amazing. I've seen it happen so much in the students I taught. When all of a sudden they're like, oh, now I get it. Now I know why I'm learning math, because I want to be a rocket scientist. Or now I know why I'm learning this or whatever it might be, because I want to do this, and this is the tool that helps me get there. So anything else? Yes, sir? All right.
How hard emotionally was it to write the book?
It was very difficult. Like I said earlier, there was a lot of times in which I was very bothered in writing it. And that one scene, the thing that I read about when Mom came in, I had to pretend I was asleep so she wouldn't see me crying. That really bothered me a lot. And I would read it sometimes to my writer friends in critique group, and I couldn't hardly get through it when I would be reading it. And because I remember those days as being a kid, and then to just all of a sudden realize that, you know, there's a lot of kids out there that are dealing with this, and there's a lot of unnecessary pain in a lot of kids' lives. And so just kind of having to be in Jimmy's head so much when he's dealing with things wasn't depressing, but it bothered me. And in all of our books, when you have to write some things that are not great, you know, where, I mean, it's not things that you want to have happen, but they have to a character, it'll bug me for days. In one of our books, we had a character, I called up Diane and I said, I think August is going to die. I said, that's the way things are working out. And she's like, no, he can't die. And I said, he is. And it bothered me for weeks to have to write that scene where he died. And so you get so invested into it where these characters are real. I mean, if Jimmy walked in right now, I'd know who he was. Or if any of these other characters, if I saw him on the street, I'm like, I know who that is. And so it's really an odd thing that I never had ever thought about until I got into writing, you know, and how they become real. So anyway, well, let's talk about some other things. How many of y'all in here would like to be a hero? Okay, that's good. Some of y'all are sort of want to be a hero, right? And we'll come back to that in a little bit. And we'll talk about writing a little bit more. We talked about emotion and things like that. How many of y'all would like to read somebody's mind? Who thinks that would be cool? Oh, yeah. I got a few minds I'd like to read right about now. How many of y'all would like to read the mind of somebody dead? Would that be interesting? It'd be kind of cool. Well, y'all have read a book and you've watched movies and you've watched TV shows. So you've done all of those things. Because when you're reading the Fat Boy Chronicles, when you're reading Romeo and Juliet, when you're reading Lord of the Flies, when you're reading whatever it might be, there was a time in which Romeo and Juliet did not exist. There was a day in which there was no Harry Potter, there was no Darth Vader, there was no Jimmy Winterpock. And then what happened? Somebody created them, right? They came out of my head, they came out of Shakespeare's head, they came out of whoever, J.K. Rowling, right? And they go, you know what, I'm thinking of this kid, and wow, wouldn't it be interesting if he was a wizard, and I'm going to name him Larry Potter. And everybody goes, that sounds awful, right? And I'm going to give him these goofy little glasses, or whatever character that, whatever you're reading, okay? There's a time in which that character did not exist, and then they did. And from that moment forward, they'll exist forever. And so when you read a book, it doesn't matter what it is. Even if you're reading the comics on Sunday, imagine that you're looking over the shoulder of that writer as they're coming up with that, and they're going, I'm not sure about that, and I need to change that, and da-da-da-da-da. And that's not the right word. And that's not a good transition between these two paragraphs. And all of a sudden they go, oh my gosh, I'm done. I love that. And then they put it out there for you to read. But you're getting to see that last little version right before they went save on their computer, or they finished scribbling out on their parchment paper, or whatever it might be. And so regardless of what you read, whether it's something from somebody alive or somebody that's been dead a long time, you're reading their mind, because that's where that came from, right? And so it really puts you in touch with now and the past and whatever, just through that person's thoughts. How many of y'all, when you get your papers back from your teacher, will say, and there's like red marks on it? Anybody ever get something back, your essay, and there's like, you might want to fix this? Okay. Yes, all of us, right? And how many of y'all have said, are you kidding me? This has got to be the greatest 2 paragraphs in the history of 10th grade literature. Yes. All of y'all do that. You're like, why are you kidding? Oh my gosh, I spent like 12 minutes on that. You know? And so, but in light of what we talked about a while ago with me being a coach and a teacher and all that stuff, if you were to pick up the Fat Boy Chronicles and you started reading, you go, wow, this is a jumbled mess. I don't like this. Oh, but I met that author. I'll keep reading it. Are you going to keep reading if you really don't like it? No, because you know what? You're going to judge. And if you never met me and you're reading my words and they're like all over the place, doesn't that reflect on me? Because isn't the assumption that I've made it the best I possibly can, and that's the way I see the world and the way I think, and I went, here, publisher, put it out there for everybody to see and to read. Yes? So when you turn something in and you go, you know what, that's the best I can do, and I really don't need any feedback, then you're going to be judged. People think that that's the way you think. They're like, okay, that's the best you can do, then I guess that's exactly the way, that's what you're totally capable of. But that's not true. Everything you'll ever do, if you don't spend time going over it again and again, it'll never be the best you can do, because that first time is just kind of getting it down on paper. There's not one thing we've ever worked on in which we did not spend more time editing than we did writing. Every time. Whether it's a script, whether it's a paragraph or whatever. The Fat Boy Chronicles took us 9 months to write and a little over a year to edit, right? And this is a fairly simple book. We've got some books that are that thick where it took us a year to write and 2 to 3 years to edit, okay? And so always say, when your teacher says, you might want to work on this, you go, oh, thanks, cool. I can make it better. And then you can see what I'm really capable of doing, okay? So always remember that. Two of the things that kind of come up in the story here is the childhood obesity and the bullying part, right? And both of those are issues that are not unique to your generation, but pretty much a big part of it. There's no such thing as grandparent obesity month, right? It's childhood obesity. And so these are the things you need to think about is every little thing that you do, especially when it comes to being active and all that, matters. Because it doesn't matter. You never see the grass grow, but all of a sudden you got to cut it, right? Isn't that right? Well, I do. Maybe y'all don't. But I have to cut it. And I never see it grow. I can look at it all day long and I never see it growing. But it is just little by little. And so if you don't think about every day and what you're doing for yourself, then little by little things might get to where you don't want them to be. Okay? And then the bullying thing has gotten really out of hand in this generation. As we'll talk about in a minute. There's a word that really didn't exist 10 years ago, bullycide, right? But now it's out there. You know, it's in the dictionary, it's on the TV, it's on the internet. Unfortunately, that's a word that we all have to deal with, adults and kids alike. But until you guys realize that, hey, you know what? There's some problems, and I want mom and dad and my teachers and everybody to help me, but I have to be the main one to solve this. And whether it's for yourself or whether it's for your friends. Well, let's talk for a minute. I wanted to show a video. Yeah, that's the kid. Doug Henning is the kid that we met. And that's a little quote from him. But here's a video of him. And then we'll kind of talk about some other things.
Every single day I'd come home from school, I'd have a snack or something just because it was always a rough day. Really had a tough time. I moved to a new school and just didn't really have that much luck making new friends.
Obesity really has a significant impact on self-esteem. It has an impact on social networking for teenagers as well as adults. Teenagers, though, have a particularly difficult time because so much about who you are and who you're going to become is born out of those interactions with your classmates.
While I was overweight, I played soccer. Well, I remember at one practice, we decided to scrimmage against ourselves. So we just split into teams, and being guys, they're like, oh, let's just do shirts for skins. The person who in charge of our team chose to be skins. All my soccer teammates, were giving me the weird looks. They were pointing at me and laughing. Once the game was over, I immediately ran back and put my shirt on and left. I had never really felt that, unaccepted before. You like to think that, people are really good and that they won't judge you and that they are your friends, or at least will try to be your friend. And then especially those people on my soccer team, they were okay with me, I knew I wasn't the best, but they didn't really care about that. But then right when I saw them, going and saying hey to making fun of me, that's just about the worst feeling that you could have. You feel like, no matter what, everyone's always going to think of you as the big fat guy. It cuts really deep, and it makes you feel like, my family accepted me, but besides that, they kind of have to. Whereas these other people, they choose to. Well, everyone else seemed to not choose, getting to know me. I had one pretty good friend, we'd talk, but, we'd hang out every now and then, but it wasn't really anything. My parents helped me out a lot. No matter what, they always loved me. God really helped me through that time. You just don't feel accepted at all in this world. But at least you have those concrete people we'll accept you for who you are. The summer after my 8th grade, I began working out and dieting, and so that summer I kept it up, and I lost a total of 45 pounds that summer. I enjoy my life so much more now, and rather than, wishing I had friends and wishing I could go out and have a group of guys to hang out with and just go out and have a good time, or just sit back and, go to the movies or something like that. It's incredible the amount that it has changed my life, and just the, like you said, the quality of my life. It has just increased it so much.
Yeah, so Doug was wonderful, and he still is, and when we do events near Cincinnati, then he'll go with us. One of the most poignant things was the school where he went to middle school reads the book, right? And so we went back and did an event there, and he was already in college and all that, and he was up on stage, and somebody asked him something, and he got to thinking about it, and he said, he said, it feels really strange to be asked for my autograph in the same hallway that I was picked on. And it started getting to him, and he started crying, and we just had to move on because he started remembering. And so it's that thing, like I told you, people will never forget how you treat them. And so make sure those are good memories. And but yeah, Doug's wonderful. But when we met him, he was like slim and trim. We're like, well, hey, you're talking about being the overweight picked on kid, and now you look great. And so like he talked in the video about how he decided to make a change as an 8th grader. And so like his 8th grade summer, in that 2-month time period, he lost like 40-something pounds. And he's kept the weight off. And so it's great to interact with him. How was Doug bullied? Did he talk about it? Did people hit him? Did they throw things at him? Even in the movie. How was Jimmy picked on? Except for the time when Rob shoves him into the locker. Other than that, it was only what? What? It was words, right? Yes. It was words, or it was lack of words. When you're being ignored, that's just as bad as somebody dogging you out many times. One of the things that Doug told us that reminds me, he said, you know what? Sometimes it was okay if they picked on me. And we're like, really? Why? And he said, because at least I know they saw me. And he said he felt invisible many times in school. That's not the way school should be. Okay? Words are important, right? Words. Even though there's that little nursery rhyme that says, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never harm me. Oh, yes, they will. They will definitely harm you very much. How many of y'all have ever been to Washington, D.C.? That's right. Me too. And if you haven't, you will one day. And it's very inspiring. And you see the Capitol, and you see all these cool buildings. You can go to the museums and look at all the stuff. But you know what really gets to me every time? The stuff is cool. But the stuff that gets to me emotionally is when I walk in the Jefferson Memorial, the Roosevelt Memorial, the Capitol, and the Lincoln Memorial, and I read the words on the walls. Because the words are what made this nation. The words, backed up by action, changed history. The words are as much what define us as anything, right? And so the words inspire me because words are important. And then you walk out and you stand on this spot and it says, on this spot, Martin Luther King Jr. stood and gave his I Have a Dream speech. It was only words, but it changed history, right? So words are very, very important. In this bullying situation, what are the parts? There's the bully, and there's the victim, and then anybody else? Yes, right? There's the bystanders. And something I want to say before I forget it is we're talking about school and all that, but this applies forever. You could be 13 or you could be 53, and there will be a moment when you have a chance to speak up for somebody. or when you have a chance to do something right, and if you haven't considered what you will do when that situation arises, you might hesitate. And so there'll be a time somewhere where somebody, I mean, I've had to deal with this in high school where somebody goes, hey, you want to try this? If you haven't thought about what you're going to say, you might let peer pressure get in the way. When the moment comes where you can look over and you say, oh, you know, oh gosh, I think I should say something. And that moment's gone because you didn't, right? If you haven't thought about whether or not how you're going to act or react ahead of time, you might hesitate, all right? And so always kind of know, gosh, when I see somebody being bullied, what am I going to do? Okay? And then it's easy to do it if you've thought about it ahead of time. So there's the bystander, right? Most people are bystanders. Most of us go, wow, I'm sure glad that's not happening to me, right? And then you hesitate, and then the situation keeps going, and that kid who's the victim thinks that nobody cares. In the way that Doug was like, I felt invisible. They feel like nobody cares. Their classmates and many times some of the folks around them. So one of the things let's look at the next slide. There's always going to be a moment in which somebody says, or how many of y'all have seen bullying or are you aware of it or whatever? Okay? So the next question would be, and if I was a parent and I would say, or I would ask my kids, I'd say, have you seen bullying? Or when I ask schools, like we'll all speak to 1,500 at a time, and I'll go, how many of y'all seen bullying in your school? And they go, me, right? And then I'll say, what did you do? And then they all get kind of mush mouth. And they go, well, was it they didn't want to get in trouble. They didn't want to say anything. They didn't want to be the kid who like stands up to the bully and all that kind of stuff. So they just let it keep going, all right? So if you're aware of things, then think about how you might do something. And maybe it's just simply saying, Mrs. Johnson, I just want to talk to you for a minute. And it's okay, all right? You're not being a tattletale if you're telling about something that's very important, because how important things are is signified in these images. Look at all these pictures. They look kind of like school pictures. The one on the top left, and the one right there, and the one in the middle, and this kid here, and those other two. They all got happy smiles and faces, right? Well, let me tell you a couple of the stories. The girl in the middle, her name was Phoebe, and she had just moved to New England from Ireland. And she was kind of cute, and all the guys were checking her out, and the girls got jealous, and they started writing on Facebook about her, making up stuff. And then they started calling her names in the school hallways, and then they started throwing stuff at her when she got off the bus. And she told her mom, and her mom went to the school, and they said, well, it's not that bad, and we'll talk to the kids about it, but it never really changed. And she had friends, and she had kids that knew her, and they knew what was going on. And they didn't tell anybody. And then one day, Phoebe's little sister came home from school and found Phoebe hanging in the closet, right? Because she couldn't take it anymore. And then all of her friends and everybody who had seen what was happening on Facebook, and the people that kind of knew her, that knew what was going on, and the people on the bus, they just wanted to tell the teachers and their moms and their dads and their counselors and the police and all these people, oh my gosh, you won't believe how they've been treating Phoebe, right? They just couldn't shut up then. But when she needed them, they said nothing, right? She needed somebody to speak for her before things got that bad, and nobody did anything. The kid in the little picture is kind of hard to see. His name was Eric, and he was in high school, and that's his senior picture. And in class one day, the kid who was on the football team, who was kind of the bully in front of the teacher, this kid said to Eric, hey, Eric, why don't you just go home and shoot yourself? Nobody's going to miss you. And that's what he did, right? And so nobody spoke up for Eric, and nobody told that kid, hey, that's not cool. Nobody went over to Eric and said, you're okay, kid, all right? Tomorrow will be okay. Hang in there. Nobody did that for him. Nobody did that for any of those kids on that slide. And I could have 50 slides filled up with kids like that. And they come from all over the nation and all races and all levels of where they live and everything like that, right? And it's everyone is an awful, sad story because nobody really did anything for them when they were here with us. And you know what? We can't do anything about those kids. Nothing. But you can do something about your friends. You can do something about when you get out of school and you're out living life and things like that, right? You can always do something while they're here with us, okay? And you can really, really, really make a difference, you know? Some of y'all in this group are leaders, guarantee you. Some of y'all are leaders in the sense that you don't even realize it. If you are an athlete in a school and you are a premier athlete, whether it's middle school or high school or college and pros, you see it in the pros. And a lot of those guys have never understood that how much influence they can have on a community. When you're an athlete in high school and middle school, people kind of look up to you. And so you can be a leader in the sense that you're saying, I'm not going to let this happen in my school. I'm a leader, and I'm going to say what I think, and I'm going to act what I think, right? And you can do an awful lot of influence simply by being an athlete that a lot of kids, especially in high school, look up to you, right? And in college. So think about what you're leaving behind. You know, you can organize the dance and people can come up to you one of these years and go, oh my gosh, that was the best dance we've ever had. I'm so happy about it. Or somebody can come up to you and say, I want to thank you for what you did for me, right? Or they could be the face that never shows up because you did nothing, okay? So you have to think about that kind of stuff. You know, I asked you a little bit ago, I said, who wants to be a hero? Guess what those kids needed in that slide? Every one of them needed a hero because like I told the little kiddies a while ago, heroes aren't necessarily firemen and policemen and soldiers and teachers and moms and dads. Heroes can be anybody that saves a life. And guess what? If somebody had spoken up for those kids, what they would be to them? They would be their hero, wouldn't they? Right? So you can be a hero in the 8th grade, in the whatever grade you might be in. You can be that person that makes a big difference. And you might not ever know it. You might not ever know what you did for them, but they'll know. I always tell a story, and then we'll, if you want to ask some questions, that's cool. I was in a school and walking down the hall, going to a talk, and we were by the water fountain, and the water was wet, and this kid slipped, and he fell, and I heard this crack, and I looked over, and it looked like the bone was trying to stick out of his arm, right? And he was laying there kind of screaming and all this. And I was like, I didn't know who he was, and I wasn't a teacher there. And so I kind of looked, and I just went on to give my talk. And a lot of the kids that were trying to get a seat in the front and all this kind of stuff, they just walked on by him and came on to the talk. And I could hear him as I walked on back there yelling, did I do the right thing? Yes or no? Why? Yes, I could have. And so I always ask the question, so it's not okay for me to walk by somebody with a broken arm that will heal. And it's okay for others to walk by somebody with a broken heart that might not ever heal, right? Now, I made that story up, but it gets the point across, doesn't it? Okay? I can tell you for a fact that the scars you put on somebody's heart never go away. Okay? So always think of that. But let's finish with something good. Y'all got to practice once, so now we're going to practice again, which is being nice. All right? Because practice makes better. Maybe not ever perfect. We can always strive for that. But practice certainly makes you better. All right, we're going to do it again. So even if you sat by the same person, there's something else you can say that's nice. So you're going to turn and say something nice to everybody on the side of you. Ready, go. There we go. All right. That was good, and that was easy. And that's a good thing to do every day. All right? And so you might be sitting next to somebody you kind of know, somebody you really know, or somebody you don't know. But it's okay to be nice. Doesn't hurt a thing, makes you feel better. So anyway, I hope that some of the things we talked about, even though they're difficult to talk about, hopefully it made a difference. Hopefully the movie helped you in some way to understand Jimmy's life and some of the lives of the kids that you know. All right? And I thank you for the invite. And y'all have been wonderful. And I tell you what, I sometimes when I go to speak, if they would focus and pay attention like y'all have, it would be wonderful. And so thank you so much, and all the best with your school days. And guess what? It's almost time for summer. All right? Yeah, buddy. So thanks a bunch, everybody.
Thank you.